Hey guys, it's me Rebecca. So this will be the start of another weekly vlog. And so for today I've just done some work and I edited my previous vlog and exported it. During which I realized for something happened to my info clip. Like I'm pretty sure I filmed one but it just disappeared on me. I don't know, but quickly had to shoot something for that and yeah, and I also did some yard work and whatnot, and I did do some reading. I started A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the sequel to The Tainted Cup. I'm just going to talk about the Tainted Cup because, that is the first book, but with that we follow Denos Cole as he's this assistant to this talented director, detective. detective named Anna Dorba. And with Anna, she's quite an eccentric character. She goes outside blindfolded and she'll just be up to weird stuff and whatnot. And it's just the two of them working together trying to solve this case of this man. I believe he was someone in power, I don't remember exactly, who died, and the weird thing about his death is a tree sprouted from his body, and they're just trying to figure out how this happened. And it leads to bigger things that involves empire and these creatures called leviathans who do attack the empire from the water every season. And with the second book, we are following a different case. It seems like it's, in a sense, Thanos has been working with Anna for about a year and a half, and they've been working different cases and whatnot. And so far, it's feeling like almost mystery of the week. Like we see how they're really into this partnership. How it's not created, but it's already being created, and both of them are settled into their roles. Like they've been working together for over a year now, so they're used to it. And Dennis is used to Anna being Anna. And if this one involves the death of someone from a treasury, and yeah, and they would just have to figure it out. The weird thing about this case is that the person disappeared from the rooms almost like it goes like there's no one else who entered the room, and there's been no, I guess, no scent or anything that another person was present in the room, and no one could have gone into the room through the window because the room was quite high up, so it would have been impossible, and it's just them trying to solve that case. And so far I'm only 80 pages in, but I am liking it. We see then how he also meets this other quite eccentric character, this Apaf, what is it? Signum, who was just lying on the ground, like with her arms across her chest, just sniffing air, trying to smell him, and him kind of learning about what happened and learning that the way the body was disposed of, it was in water, and these turtle-like creatures got to the body, so it's not entirely whole. They were only unable to identify the body through whatever blood was remaining in it, because those in the treasury delegation, they have this special type of blood. So I do take a note, so I don't feel like I'm a rumbling idiot, and I didn't know it's like this person is not 100% identified. However, he was someone who was a member of the Treasury delegation who came to town to deal with taxes, and he's the only person who's gone missing, so it's gotta be him almost, as well as the blood thing. And the situation with this is that with the Treasury are in this area, which isn't formally part of the empire, but almost 100 years prior, the previous kings, they made a deal that 100 years time this area will be part of the empire, and at the time it looked good for the king of this land, but since then things have changed. This land was used to dispose of the bodies of the Leviathans after they were killed during the Leviathan season, and since then the Dozen Empire, they're able to take the bodies elsewhere as well. They have better weapons and better methods of dealing with the Leviathan, and now it looks less favorable, and the current king is doing everything in his power to not make this transition as smooth as possible, making it quite difficult. So there is also the possibility that this death could almost disrupt this translation from occurring. And besides all of that, we also see how then he's also dealing with his own stuff. His father took out loans that probably weren't some good loans, and prior to his death he took out another huge loan to pay the medics in order to find a cure and really treat him more. And since his father's death, then has inherited these debts and has been paying it off, hoping to pay off all of his family's debt and then make some money of his own so that he can get his family out of this poor area and into a better section of the empire. And it seems like because of the area he is in and because of the nature of his job at the debt collectors, they're worried that he's not going to be able to pay off his debt before he dies, so they have sent a representative to him to inform him that they're going to raise the amount that he'll be paying them. So now he'll be paying the debt collectors 2/3 of his income. And he's also been sending money home to his family so they can support themselves. So now he's extremely poor. He won't really be. He's just gonna have to function on the extremely bare minimum. So yeah, there is that, and it's also interfering with his own plans for his own career. He's been working with Anna for a year and a half, like I mentioned, and after 2 years of working with her, he could possibly transfer to another unit, and he wants to transfer to the elite of the Empire Legion, which essentially is like guards, from what I gathered. He wants to try and prevent crime before it occurs instead of trying to solve what happened when and deal with the aftermath. But with this, if he does transfer, it will increase his the amount he'll have to pay to the debt collectors as well. He'll probably just won't be allowed in, so he's dealing with that in as well. We do see more of his character in a sense. Like, he does sleep around. He is someone who has casual sex with both men and women in order to almost forget his issues that he's having as well. Take his mind off. A certain captain, what was his name? Strophy, that he had a thing with in the previous novel. So I'm curious on how that's gonna happen, and that's all. Most of this was before Anna came into the book, but with Anna coming into the novel, like, she's first introduced when she's eating oysters and throwing the shells behind her, leaving a mess, and she's like, oh, I'm just trying to get understand the land and the area around me, while she's completely blind. Yeah, and she has then talked to the banker, really, that's someone who works in the treasury, and engraver, someone who has an excellent memory as well, who's been altered to have an excellent memory as well, and really learn the business that man handled when he was there. And she then also talks to the rest of the delegation and gets information on this man, and she compares the notes, and there's some discrepancies that's like, because someone in that delegation who's worked with this man before knows that shows how tall he was, and then shows how tall that the treasurer engraver said the man he worked with, who said he was this guy, is. And the man who was the part of the treasury delegation is much taller than the other men that the engraver worked with. And there's also been some other stuff, like the way this guy behaved, like with him being an exonym, someone who's incredible at math. Typically, they are not known for knowing how to socialize with others. You know, this gentleman, the one who said he was this officer, was very aware of his surroundings, made conversation. Just didn't really behave like you would expect an exom to behave. And the one from the delegation worked with this guy before said, I don't like him. So it seems like it is the case that someone killed this original man, and then someone took his place, and then they just disappeared after they did their business. And I am very much intrigued to see if that's actually the case, and if the dead man in the water was mutated because he had parts of his skin cut off to hide his identity and to allow this impersonator to take his identity as well as he can be, because they would need a special kind of blood and whatnot. So it would be very complicated to just say, oh, I'm this guy, and that's like it's just complicated. So yeah, and so far I am enjoying it. I'm just having fun with this. Only pages, and I'm just intrigued, I would say. So yeah. And yeah, I'm sorry if it got darker. I just noticed that as I was filming this clip, and yeah, I think that's all for now. So I'll see you. So it's the next day, and so for today I just did some housework and whatnot. I just had to help my mom cut the grass a bit, and yeah. And otherwise, it's quite a dreary day. Like, it looks like it's gonna downpour any second, and it's quite chilly. Like, I think compared to last week where we had a day like where it was 90, it's like 60 something. So yeah, spring is back. And even though it is the middle of June, and yeah, and I did a bit more reading of A Drop of Corruption, putting me on page 162, and I'm definitely intrigued by the mystery. We do see how there's more evidence kind of being shown that there was an imposter, and it reveals like how he might have gone out of that room, and how he knows methods of impersonating the person he was impersonating, especially when it comes to entering the treasury. And also he knows methods of destroying evidence to prevent the other Apovs from smelling him and thinking something's off here. And we learn their business in the treasury, which was to take something from an Apov's box, and the Apov, he's not really being straightforward about it. He's saying it's like some, oh my word, what was it, graphs, like that people can wear to prevent very like curable diseases, very common diseases. And yet Anna and then are like, that's not it. But the thing is, this individual, they replace whatever they took from that box with a head. And it's not a head of our demon, because he was missing his jaw, and this guy had his jaw. So they think it's someone who was on this ship that went missing. The entire crew went missing 2 years prior, and like, they've since been declared dead and whatnot. And Anna is like wondering what else is more valuable, as this person who took the whatever was in the box left a message in a language that hasn't been used in a long time, but the message essentially reads, I am the Emperor. Someone who thinks they're bigger and better than the current emperor, the current king of this region, and the emperor of the empire. And she also thinks the person might have been an Apov themselves, as they would know how to extract blood and pee from a person to use, both to leave behind as evidence to show that that man was there, but also methods to get into the treasury, because like she thinks this person also might have the blood of a treasury member in them, because in order to enter the treasury, I guess someone from the treasury delegation, you put your hand on this like palm tree thing, and if it turns a certain color, you will have access. You are able to get in, and this person has access to the treasury, and she also thinks that box previously belonged to our suspect, as they also need special blood to have access to it, so there is that to figure out. And she tries to interview the person who currently owns the box, and thinks that their supervisors might try to interfere, or might try to prevent them from answering her questions, and yet they just allow him to answer her questions. Well, there is some confidential stuff like he cannot talk about, and there is there to make sure that none of her questions are too like go a certain way where it would be difficult for him to answer because of confidentiality. But during this interview, she notices she hears the tapping, and she concludes it's like a language. The set was it on my word was it was just a sect of monks who vowed to verbal silence, and the only way they communicate is through tapping. And it seems like this man knows the method and is unconsciously taps like his worries. And this man, we learned he was stationed previously at this thing called the Shroud. Yeah, which I wasn't sure if I was gonna pronounce that properly, but I don't really know how to pronounce that because I'm reading it basically. But an Ashram is like, from what I gathered, essentially the place where they bury the empire buries the bodies of the Leviathan, and it's made in a very complicated way that you're getting into before supervisors are like, you're getting into confidential stuff, sir. But essentially it's like made from the skin, the blood of the Leviathan to keep them there. And Anna is sure that this plays a role into this case. Like, it could be someone who he worked with previously, and he's not, but we're not sure. And but she and then talk, and she knows, like, it's like she can read his mind. Like, she's like, I know you're sleeping around. I'm not surprised that there's rumors going around that you're a whore and I'm your pimp. I also know you're thinking of transferring to the island, I believe it was. And she understands his reasoning. Is like, I'll write you that letter of recommendation when you eventually decide. But I think by the end of the 2 years, you will decide to stay with me on your willingly. I mean, and she just has him run around trying to interview everyone who previously owned that box, and he's able to talk to most people. There's a few that he either cannot find or isn't able to talk to, and everyone has airtight alibis. Some haven't even visited the treasury in months and years. But one thing is him seeing the old ways of this land, because he goes to the treasury delegation when they are discussing like an offering with the king, and he sees these people like chained up in this carriage, and he's worried about that. And it seems like these people, they were servants who were born into servitude because of their parents. And apparently in this land, the old ways at least, is that if you're born into servitude, you're only freed if your master allows it, and most masters, they're not gonna allow that. So those people in the carriage, they were those who tried to run away, and they failed to do so. And then acknowledges like he might be a bit like arrogant, ignorant, not. But he's he thinks it might be a bit barbaric, but it's the way of Levan. I think that's what he acknowledges. Like, I might think that, but it's the way people do things. And even that, the officer that Apov he met earlier, Malo, she's also like, oh no, I agree with you. This is not okay, but yeah, there's that, and I did like that conversation on like how people react to how the older generation or a certain land might do things that is very much different to how it happens on your own land, if that makes sense. And I do like that, and yeah, I know he is on a ship going to this like smuggling camp with a bunch of warden raiders, trying to do this to raid this camp, because they think their suspect is there. And while on the ship, everyone has questions for them. Oh, is the Emperor really 400 years old, or why are you able to do what you're able to do? And whatnot. It seems like certain people are able to get alterations because of their descendants from another group. So yeah, I'm also liking that you're hearing more of the history of the Empire, and also I like how people see the Emperor as like this god because he's so old, he's so almighty, like he sits high in a castle above here. Like, it's like a lot of people think that he's higher than his people, that he isn't one of them. So I think there's a worry, like, if someone is that high and mighty, like, how do they treat their people? So yeah. So far, I'm just liking it, I guess. I'm just having fun with it. And yeah, I think that's all for now. So it's the next day, and it's another gloomy day. Like, it's this dark, and it's been raining basically all day, and yeah. And I have just done some laundry and whatnot. I also did some other work, and I did do some reading Coffee Drop of Corruption. Put me on page 262, and I'm definitely having fun with this mystery. We see, like, things get weird when on a boat when they pull this body from the water, and this body, like, it's not entirely human. There's fish parts attached to it, and we see how there's some carcinogen that's affected some people in this area. I mean, one man who was like sitting in a tree probably looked out, and they shot him with arrows. He fell, and he was like frozen solid. He was dead, and this caused them to put on these like almost hazmat helmets. The thing is, it kind of not altered their senses, but like weakened their senses in the sense it obscured their sight, the smells, everything. So they're in a bit of a vulnerable position, and they're not really able to see us well, hear us well, the whole thing. And this is really just for their own protection, for any collagen that might be in this area, because when they get to the camp, they see everyone is like frozen solid, like all in stances, like they're trying to defend themselves from something, and in the center of it, there's just like this weird pot and whatnot. And they do come across these survivors who are attacking the people who are standing guard on the boat, and yeah, they fight them, have to arrest most of them, and one of the survivors talks and says that this person who called himself the Pale King joined their camp, led them in. They never saw his face, as he always wore this like his own kind of protection, and the king, like, he has knowledge about everything, like there's no secret you could hide from him. This like figure they almost feared. And when I was like, this survivor, he said king initially, and I was like, is this a plot twist? Is the king corrupted? And but no. But yeah. And they find this king's hideout. They find this like coin that's really given to people who are in court, or like they are those who are noble, and this suggests that it's someone who does hold some power. And when they return, they do have to isolate and be treated for the contagion. Then turns out to be okay, which, I mean, it's good for the plot. Like, so it wouldn't. I think it would have dragged out a bit if he was infected. But I'm kind of wishing he was infected just to see what would happen, and I'm curious to see what will happen with the fact like there was suspicions of him being infected, with the fact like with his father's steps and whatnot. Like, if the people who hold it up will find out in ways that even more if he'll be completely broke. And yeah, he's after his treatment, after being isolated for some time, like a day or so, he's taken to the Apophs once more to give his statement, and Anna is like outside the door. She's like the two haven't had a chance to speak, and it's like she knows shit, and the like leader of the Apoph, so like, how the hell does she know? It's just, the whole thing is a bit funny. But where's my train of thought? Yeah, she figured out she was given names of those who like previously owned the safe deposit box who are currently alive. However, she wasn't given names of those who are dead because, like, why would they give her names of people who are dead? It's not like they're zombies. Like, it doesn't seem like there's zombies in Ellen. Like, it can't be dead men rising, except it kind of is, but it's someone who faked their own death. Like, it's someone who didn't go mad. I'm getting ahead of myself. No, explain later, I think. She has the one who saved the deposit box was messed with, and his boss like tell her everything, and they do. In a sense, like it began with like this research project used to create healing grafts and sufficients by taking an organ from the Leviathan and keeping the organ alive. Essentially, it was something if the king of this region learned about, it would just bring the Apophs a lot of trouble from them. And they were already dealing with some trouble because with each organ being different and unique to each Leviathan, they needed a way of reading the randomness, so they created this graph essentially that has a temporary effect. It allows exams a heightened mental state and gives them pattern identifying abilities, and there are problems with this as it did affect people's mental state, and to the point like they were trying to find patterns in everything, how people can only be on this graph for 3 years before issues arrive. And our suspect, he didn't go mad, but he planned to fake his death by almost sabotaging the uniform of someone on his team, taking a few of these graphs and then leaving. And yeah, with the fact he's also given himself some own dosage and being on it for about almost twice as long as it should be, is causing effects such as paranoia, fatality, violence, and like sleeping good or eating good, and this now knowing how to interact with people. So, and then soon he'll be permanently disabled and won't die. So yeah, there's that. Like, it's all a mess, and we see. I'm like how we're seeing how this investigation. It's frustrating Anna, because she has all of this evidence, this testimony, this like not DNA. I mean, this I have a data. Oh my God, and it's like nothing makes sense from it. Like she can't draw any conclusions. Like you say how it's affecting her, how it almost feels like she thinks other people are not taking it seriously. Like we see, she is a bit frustrated with Din the next morning when she knows that he didn't follow her orders and get some rest. Like he slept with someone, and apparently was quite loud. Let's just say, but she also knew and suspected this guy's next move, in a sense, The next morning it is announced the king of this region is killed, and that the leader of the treasury delegation has been arrested for his death, and many in court want him to put to death. And the prince, because Anna sent a message to this leader warning him of the suspect, the prince knows it isn't the guy from the treasury, but Anna and others who have to come to the castle because people want this guy executed. So yeah, from what I got to, we see how Anna, Din, and Mile have just arrived in their castle, and Owen their like most formal wear. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see Anna like court politics, because I mean, so far it seems like she knows how to talk to these people, knows how to behave, and yeah, so far I'm just having fun with this mystery. Like, I like seeing how it unravels. I'm not usually someone who guesses, and I mean, with this one we know who did it. We're just trying to find them at this point, but yeah. And yeah, I think that's all for now, so I'll see. So it's the next day, and I've just been out running some errands, and before I left I did do some reading of A Drop of Corruption, putting me on page 340, and I do have to say I am definitely enjoying this. We leave off with the prince allowing Anna to investigate the death of his father, even though he has advisors who are adamant that it is the leader of the treasury delegation calling for the man's execution, and it's because he's the one who served the king tea when he collapsed them. They were having this like tea meeting, like quite extremely like confidential meeting, like not even the servants were there, so they were serving themselves tea through the prince, the king's son. He served the king 2 cups of tea, put a cup back, the cup was left alone for a bit. Then the leader of the treasury delegation served the king tea, and then that's when the king collapsed. So yeah, and the advisors also think that because the leader he himself fell ill, it also is proof of his guilt. And Anna learns that it's because there's poison on the cup, and I guess the leader has a bad habit of biting his nose, so the poison got into his system that way. And they interviewed the 2 advisors, and they have the imperial officer, the Puff Mile. They're acting essentially like as a lie detective because of her heightened abilities. She can send someone's heartbeat go faster, like all the telltale signs that someone might be lying. And both advisors are lying. One is lying about the health of the king, probably to protect the king, like even in death. The lie of the other's unknown, and the other advisor just tell us that the king, he was an old man, he had memory issues, like it seems like he had Alzheimer's or dementia or something of this sort from the way he described it. And also, the one who lied about the health of the king, he is someone who sticks to the old ways of things and wants to ensure everything he does honors his ancestors, which is that's the way of things in this land. And he blames the shroud for all of the bad luck, and like other says that with the prince being the preferred heir, like the king giving him all of his silver and whatnot, that would be respected in their land. Like no one would go after the prince for the position of being the next king, and like they would honor the wishes of the previous king and whatnot. So, and they also bring in the engraver who was with the treasury delegation, and Anna's like, yeah, you betrayed both the empire and this region, and by passing information to the suspect through a source, because the suspect was giving her money. And before the engraver is able to tell who is her source in the court, she dies. She was also poisoned, who the poisoner got the poison in her blood. And they go back, and with I guess with this stuff, that's when the Treasury delegation is like, their innocence is like set in stone. And they go back to the city. The Treasury delegation leader, he wakes up and tells them that the Empire is actually withdrawing from the region. They will leave it alone and whatnot. It was like a secret being kept under wraps. Like, so it seems like it might not be thing in the for the reasoning for why our suspect caused these murders, did what he did. It seems like he just wanted to create a shot because he blames it for something, for his abilities. But the fact the Empire is withdrawing from the region, it seems to upset Mao, who, if the Empire, if the region was completely independent, that people will keep living in the old ways, and those under servitude won't be free. Like, we learn her history and why she feels so affected by this, and I understand, because, yeah. And Appa obviously planned to move the marrow, which is quite a challenging task, and then goes on to the Shroud to interview those who might have worked with the suspect or known him at least. And he does have to be isolated and given some tonic to ensure that he suppresses his emotions. And while he is in isolation, he's not talking Anna. He tells Anna about the debt collector and why he won't be able to transfer. And Anna's like, is it this group? And did someone import you? Like, it seems like she knows, which is like, I mean, Anna is the character who, she seems to know everything. And, like, she tells him that there will always, even if he doesn't believe it, it is still important. As others who serve in empires, they keep the powerful and the good in check and ensure their actions will have consequences if needed. And she also reveals she almost didn't pick him as he wasn't hurt enough, as the passionate architects or officers, or I guess the police, are those who've been hurt. Like, they've been wounded once and watched the wicked go unpunished. It puts a fire in them, and I'm curious, like, what hurt did Anna go for? Because she is someone from the way I've read in this book, it seems she is quite passionate about solving this case and how it affects her, despite the fact she's not able to solve it. Like, it doesn't feel like this is just some puzzle to solve, something to fulfill her curiosity. Like, it seems like she cares. So I'm curious about, like, her history as well. I'm also curious about her alterations, because everyone's like unsure about her alterations, what they are exactly. Like, she's a character where it's like things are unclear, and that is something I do find interesting. But with her being passionate and her feeling like Dennis and so passionate like to her, Dennis, someone who serves to support his family, he is doing this because he needs to, not because he wants to. And I'm curious to see if that will change. Like, that is very interesting, and yeah, I'm interested in that. And also I'm curious in how this cat and mouse game will go, like if they will catch their suspect or if he'll somehow get away once more, because he will sense in this pattern of his, like, that's bound to happen, like they'll catch up to him or something. So yeah. And yeah, he also did this reveal, like he did when Anna asks, oh, did you leave someone behind, like in that city we were in the previous book, and he's like, yeah, I left someone behind. I left a man behind. I don't know, I just like that, like he said to leave people behind, and I don't know, that also affects him. So I wonder if Strovi, that was the captain's name, if he will be the one who makes Din become someone who needs to be an index officer. So yeah. And yeah, that's all for now, and I'll see you next. So it's the next day, and I've just done some work and whatnot. I also did some cleaning, and I was able to go on a walk before it got too hot, and I did finish A Drop of Corruption, and I really much enjoyed this. I was torn between giving it 4 or 5 stars, and I think I've settled on 5 stars. But with this, with what I read yesterday and today, we see how then he gets through the rot, he sees the marrow, and he learns that many have died in creating this thing, and that is something that the leader of, or the creator of this face consequences for at the end of the book. Like, she asks at the end, like, with realizing the reason why she did created this in the first place was out of selfish reasons. She asks him to arrest her at the end of the novel. But he is really there to interview 2 members who worked with our suspect, who, you know, are on the same team as with him, and due to the fact they communicate with happening. And an interpreter is needed, and the one whose safe box was Master serves this role. And when he goes into it, it's like he's possessed. It was like he's in a trance. It was so weird. Like, it's like he's just a vessel for them to communicate through words. He changes his voice to match like their voices and whatnot. Like, and over the course of the conversation, we see how it's taxing for him. The 2 members are like surprised that Den isn't reacting greatly with how they are. He recognizes that Anna behaves in similar way to them, also noticing patterns and using them to predict stuff and know what has happened. Like, they predicted he would come and ask them for who they did not predict. It would be because he committed crimes. I'm gonna get my notes. They tell him how he would disappear at times, and they were worried he was suicidal, so they followed him one day, and he looked like he was desperate to escape. Like, it seems like he did care for them as as they were supposed to be with him the day of the accident, except he asked 2 other people to work with him that day, so it's like he wanted to protect them for some reason. But after the accident, they found this like shrine and of his, and it's like to his ancestors, and with these clues then comes to the conclusion that the suspect was one of the king's many children. Like, the king is a very old man, and hundreds of years old. It is stated in the book that he has like 200 children, which, yeah, and on sees sons in this. Anyway, he was taken to another region, had his life story remade. The king wanted to use him as a pawn, like bring him back into the Imperial, bring him to the Merrill to destroy it. But with his memory diminishing, the king, like, I guess, forgot about his plot and about his entirely rich. Yeah, yikes, I have to say. We also learn who the source is in court. It was one of the advisors to the prince, and we learn this because he was a greedy bastard and went away with crates of gold. Yeah, most of the money is gone with him. Some guards left with him, and others disabandoned their station. So this does weaken the prince's hold to the throne, as he doesn't have much power now. And yeah, they give chase, and there's a battle, and no shipping. They find the weapon the suspect was gonna use, but they also find the suspect's body in one of the crates, and it's like, that should be the end of it, but honestly, something's fishy here. And she has like this strange meal, and then she goes into a trance, like, where her voice changes and her eyes change, and it's like all surreal to them. And it's only in this trance that she's able to put the puzzle pieces together and figure out like what exactly is going on. And they go back to the castle, and she uncovers the suspect who is in hiding. As due to his nature, he is quite sensitive to music. She reveals his relation to the king, and we hear his resentment towards him, because, and this is what I did like, is that we see how he was told that the king's this grand figure, like he's so powerful, it's almost like he's a god, and yet when our suspect came face to face with him and saw the manner he was in, the diminishing memory he has, in a sense he mistook the suspect for someone else, he realized the king is just a man. In a way, he was disappointed. It's something I didn't like, and because of his crimes of killing the king and then his brother, because apparently twins and triplets are very common in this kingdom, but he is executed for this, which is tradition. And yeah, and when going back to the region, Anna's hit with exhaustion, and she's like, I want to be put in a coma, essentially. Like, I want to be asleep for 5 days. And before that, she tells Din to retrieve this scar from a book, and I don't know, he figures that she has this graft alteration to her where she cannot speak of she cannot tell him something, and he reads what she could be, like what her alterations are and what her state is. And yeah, and she does help him. She does help relieve him of his debt in a sense. She sent a letter to one of her colleagues, I guess, who were investigating the debt collecting office who was collecting his debts. And with this investigation, it caused the office to collapse, fall apart, and he's free. And he does decide to stay with her, and he's just like, I'm not, don't even go into your lecture, Mama. You knew this would happen. You knew I would choose to stay with you. Am I that easy to read? So yeah, I found that funny. I also am curious what will happen next, because with the collapse of the kingdom, this region, anyone will be sucked into the empire. So there will be a mass migration and a lot of immigrants. So it's what will happen to all of these people who've lived life a certain way? For so many, they've been in a position of servitude. So what will happen next? That is something I am curious about, and yeah, I'm still curious to see what Anna truly is, and if Din will ever return to the one he left behind in the previous novel. I don't know. They spent a few days together, and it has been a year and a half. So I'm just were those few days really that good? You don't really know this man. So I don't know. I'm just curious to see if Din finds his way back to the one he loves more. Has feelings for. But yeah, that's all for now, and I don't think I'll be doing any more reading today, so I'll update you when my next book will be tomorrow. So yeah, that's all for now. So it's the next day, and I just got back from running a bunch of errands. I also had to help my mom with some stuff and whatnot. But while I was out, and this morning before I left as well, I did start a new book. I started The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. And this is about this girl, she has to go to Paris from England. She has to stay with her brother for a few days, but when she gets to the apartment, he's not there. He's gone missing, and the other people in the apartment building, they are quite suspicious of her. They won't really help her or sister in this investigation, and she's just trying to find her brother. And so far I'm on page 118. And so far I'm thinking, it's okay. I'm definitely intrigued to see if someone from this apartment building is involved. It's not a thing where there's many apartments on the same level. It seems like there's only one apartment on one floor. So small community. But we start a book by meeting Ben as he's finishing up writing a story, and we learned that he is a journalist and wanted to pitch his story to this editor at The Guardian, and he seems almost resentful that his sister is coming to stay with him. Like, he thinks she's a screw up who can't get her life together, and he is leaving her a voice note and telling her like what to do when she gets there, when he hears someone open his door, and we see when Jess arrives at the apartment, resenting Ben for not answering her calls and texts, like making her walk in the cold from the train station to his apartment and not opening the door. And she is like, we learn that she's running from something, like something, and seems to have a dodgy past. As like with her work history, she can get a resource that's reliable as well. She won't go to the police when she learns her brother is missing, and fear that they'll go to the police. It seems like what is that? It has something to do with her boss, who was a creep, and yeah, she took matters into her own hands. It seems like. And with her, like, she is someone who's always on guard. She always trusts her instincts. Like, she seems a character who most of the time is quite smart, but she can't help but admit that there are people who are good looking. Like, she's attracted to her brother's friend Nate, who helped Ben get this apartment. When she meets him, she's also attracted to the editor, thinks he's attractive really, and whatnot. So there is that, and we also learned that with Benjamin and Jess, that they've had kind of a rough upbringing. While these Jess, it's like Benjamin's dad abandoned the family, and then his mom got with Jess's dad, who was an alcoholic, it seems like, who abandoned the family, and it seems like the mom might have died, or they were taken out of her care due to like everything with the father. And Benjamin has had it quite, it seems like easier. Like, he was adopted, like, and then went to a good school, and then went to a good university and all that. Like, his life went in one direction, and yet with Jess, her life anyway has gone in a different direction, because she's moved around foster care and moved between different foster families until she just grew out of the foster system and has been working in more lower jobs. But it seems like they still care about one another, and one of whom I do have to say it was BS that some social worker thought it was a good idea to separate them because of trauma. Like, not sure if that was, but yeah. But we also get the perspectives of the other residents of the building. Like, we learn their history, and we learn kind of their story. Like, we learn that one woman, she's being blackmailed by someone, and that she tries to put up an air of like she's sophisticated, she's beautiful, like she still tries to look attractive even if she's aging. We have another girl whose dad wanted to keep her away from boys completely, but now has a roommate who is very much into sex and dance and judge, and we see the relationships they might have been in. We also meet the groundskeeper, who is almost responsible for the residents of the building. Like, it seems like she knows their secrets, and she's responsible for keeping those secrets hidden. And at the end of most of their initial, I also forgot about Nate, who lives in the building, but he's like a tech guy who tries to like look like he's a minimalist, like he can just get up his life and move on when needed. So, but for most of the way their first chapter ends, it's all like, oh, everything was fine, everything was perfect until Benjamin came along, and it seems like everything was changed. So I'm curious about that. And we also see or learn really that Ben, he himself was like a bit of a chameleon. Like, he was able to charm people by just changing how he talked or behaved. Like, he was able to get people to open up, and that is something I do find quite intriguing. And we see how just like she's just going around investigating, trying to figure out where he could be. Like she interviews the neighbors who don't live, like who don't like having this new person around, and because she's Ben's sister, like they're worried what she'll dig up when she with him looking for her, with her looking for him. I mean, and yeah, and I do like the building itself. It seems like otherworldly, isolated from the rest of Paris, cause Jazz mentions that when she's on her way to meet the editor who Ben was going to pitch his story to, that Paris seems more alive than life in the apartment building, and that's the description I do find quite interesting. And we do kind of learn what Ben was up to. He was initially gonna write a story about the riots taking place in the city, about people being upset about the increase in taxes, but it seems like he found another story, something where, and Jazz later finds this notebook where he mentions something called Little Death, and mentions a couple of neighbors who might be involved. So I am curious on like how the unraveling of this. Like we hear, like in the end of the voice recording, that he left her, that he had his guard let down, something he apparently never does. Like he wasn't expecting someone to, I guess, confront him or do something to him, and it seems like someone else is involved, because after the meeting with the editor, Jazz is on her way back to her apartment, and she notices she's being followed by this woman, maybe Eastern European, probably. And this woman is looking for Ben and thinks not losing, Jazz might help her find him. So, yeah, there is that, like, I don't know, I'm not very connected to those characters just yet, because, like, this is not really character driven, but I'm definitely curious in seeing everyone's secrets come to light and see how the story unravels. So, yeah, and I do like just this like outsider in Paris, like not having a lot of resources and being utterly afraid to go to the police because of what she did back in England. So yeah, I'm wondering if that will also catch up to her in Paris. And yeah, I think that's all for now. So it's the next day, and it's quite a dreary day. Like it was raining this morning and whatnot, and it looks like it has stopped, but it's just quite cloudy, quite dark and whatnot. And I did go out this morning. I had to run a couple more errands, and I went to this like tag sale event. I didn't buy anything. There was just nothing that I really wanted. So yeah, and I did do some more reading of the Paris apartment, and I'm on page 204. And so far, I'm definitely intrigued on where this is gonna go. Like I'm definitely intrigued on who in this like apartment complex building could be responsible for Ben going missing and whatnot. And we do get a chapter from his perspective. That's where I left off yesterday. And I like with that one, you can feel the fear he's going through, like, and how he regrets that he was so arrogant, too confident. Like he felt like he was invincible and he wasn't. And we see that he's been hurt and that he is coming to terms like, oh, I've been hurt. There's a lot of my blood. And the thing with Ben's apartment is that Minnie can actually see into his like living room area from her bedroom, which is something we learn in a later chapter. And I do want to note that now, because he does go to his window and like yelling for help. He puts a bloody handprint on the window, and I feel like it should be obvious, like something happened. Like I'm wondering if Minnie saw and is somehow involved in this, or if she just wasn't in her apartment. Like, because we learn later that the two, they were involved. And we see how Minnie became fluctuated with Ben and fluctuated by him and had feelings for him. I think she would draw him into in a way would have their own way of communicating, and that is something I found quite interesting and I just felt was cute. Like, I don't know, she seems definitely intrigued by him and definitely likes him. And yeah, he just seems to care a lot about her. So there's that, and we see how Jazz is able to get someone from the apartment building to help her. Nick offers to go to the police with her and leave his contact information with them, as she doesn't want any of hers on the record, like in case they decide to compare notes with the British police. I think we do learn what happened, that she stole from the creep of a boss while he was in the bathroom and even locked him in there. And then that's when she went away. So. And they talk to a detective there, and Nick does the talking. And while I was writing my notes so I can remember what I wanted to say, I was thinking of something, and there is the language barrier in the sense that Jess doesn't know French at all. Like, she knows very little, and so she must trust Nick's word on what he told the detective on what's been happening so far. And it's like, what is stopping Nick from saying something to the detective that prevents him from really looking into what's happened to Ben? So yeah, I'm just interested if that's gonna happen or not. And we see how the drunk from the first floor, a man named Anton, he openly is like distrust Jess, and he's like, I thought you got a warning. Like, he's more open about it, and it's this funny to me. And that's when apparently the neighbors, they come together on the last Sunday of the month and come together in Sophie's apartment and share and drink and talk. And we see how Ben, he went to one and he was caught snooping around and whatnot. And Jazz goes to one of these, and she does her own snooping around, and she finds a connection that all of these people do share, how these strangers who have nothing in common are connected. And she realizes she made some assumptions about Nick. Like, he never said certain things about himself. She just assumed he was the way he was. So yeah, and we do get his perspective on that. Like, he said he didn't do it intentionally, but he wanted to carry out this fantasy of being free from these people. And Jackie, I believe that's how you say his name, who is the husband of Sophie, who they're all under the thumb of, like, they are all trying to impress him, and they all worry that like something might happen if he decides just to cut them out and whatnot. And we also learn that something did happen in Amsterdam during like a group trip that Ben and Nick went on after college, after university, with a couple of their friends that Nick wants to keep a secret, and I'm very much intrigued about that. And yeah, we just see the ways that those in the apartment kind of fear or dislike Jackie, like, and he seems like he's a man who is quite old-fashioned in the way of doing things, like why he married Sophie. Like, she was young and beautiful while he had money, and over the years that she sees it as a transaction, and then so it is like, but it's like there's a bit of an imbalance there now with her no longer young, no longer so beautiful, but he's gotten more and more richer. And with as well, the way he treats Minnie when she tries to dress in a certain way, like he calls her some stuff and it hurts her. And really how what he does to Nick when he turns 18, that is having an effect on him, and how a lot of them just seem to hate him and just like him being around. So yeah, and it seems like it was just like an open secret that just learned as other people knew. Minnie has this roommate who discusses it, like just knew all along, and people, and this girl Camille, she hosts a Halloween party, and people are like, oh yeah, this is where Minnie lives, and this is her life, and yeah. And I do have to say, just at this party, she takes a drink from someone, and she's like, oh, I always listen to my God, I always am on edge, like I'm on high alert and whatnot. And she's super on edge, she's super high alert. And yet, she's rummaging through mini stuff when with someone in the other room who led her to the bathroom, and she feels woozy out of it, and yeah, it's like, ma'am, you don't have to take a drink from a random person. Like, that was a bit stupid. Like, you say you're on high alert, but yet you also felt like you had to take the edge off. Like, really? You really thought it was okay to take a drink from some random man? Like, so yeah, that's the one thing that's happened. I'm like, but otherwise I'm enjoying it. Like, I definitely am seeing. I'm liking how things are unraveling, and we're seeing more of the, I guess, secrets people are hiding, and how just being here is having such a strong effect on people. Like with Sophie, how she is disgusted by herself, disgusted by the secrets that might be out open, and how she wants to keep all of her secrets hidden within. And yeah, I'm definitely intrigued on seeing what will happen with Ben, but yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts for now, and that's also the end of this video. So if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below telling me what you've been up to recently. If you want to, please subscribe to this channel, and if you want to follow me on any social media, then all those links are in the down bar below. I'll see you guys next time I post.